They told the world that 97 soccer fans caused their own deaths. The police said it. The media repeated it. Millions believed it. But after 27 years, official investigations uncovered something shocking. The story everyone was told wasn't true, and if you've never heard the full Hillsborough story before, stay until the end. Because what happened after the disaster may be even more disturbing than the disaster itself. This isn't just a story about soccer, it's a story about power, truth, and what happens when the people responsible for protecting the public become the ones controlling the narrative. On April 15, 1989, Liverpool faced Nottingham Forest in an FA Cup semi-final at Hillsborough Stadium in Sheffield, England. Thousands of supporters travelled to watch. One of the biggest soccer matches of the season. Families, friends, children, ordinary. People expecting an afternoon of soccer. None of them knew they were about to become part of one of the darkest days in sports history. As kickoff approached, large crowds gathered outside the Leppings Lane end of the stadium. The area became increasingly congested. Supporters struggled to get through a limited number of turnstiles. Pressure began building. The crowd became denser. People were packed tightly together. Many could barely move. Then police officers made a decision to relieve the congestion outside. Exit Gate C was opened. Hundreds of supporters poured through, but instead of directing them into less crowded areas, many were funneled into central standing pens that were already dangerously full. Within minutes, people became trapped. Fans were pressed against metal fences. Some couldn't move their arms, some couldn't breathe, some screamed for help, others desperately tried to pull strangers to safety. People climbed barriers. People waved desperately toward police officers. People begged for the match to be stopped. At first, many inside the stadium didn't even realize a disaster was unfolding. Some thought supporters were trying to get closer to the field. The reality was far worse. Men, women and children were being crushed to death. By the end of the tragedy, 97 Liverpool supporters would lose their lives. The youngest victim was only 10 years old. Think about that. A 10-year-old child went to watch a soccer game and never came home. And yet what happened next would shock an entire nation, because before investigators had gathered evidence, before witnesses had been interviewed, before families even understood what had happened, the blame was already being assigned. Just 15 minutes after the disaster began unfolding, Chief Superintendent David Duckenfield gave an explanation to the BBC. He claimed Liverpool supporters had forced open a gate. The implication was clear. The fans were responsible, and that claim spread rapidly across television, across newspapers, across the country. For millions of people, the case seemed closed almost immediately. The victims had become the suspects. The dead had become the accused, and for years, that narrative dominated public opinion. Supporters were described as drunk, reckless, out of control. Many people accepted those claims because they came from official sources. After all, why would the police lie? But there was one problem. The evidence didn't support the story, and over time, more and more cracks began to appear. Witness accounts didn't match the official version. Survivors told different stories. Emergency workers described serious failures in crowd. Control questions started growing. Then, investigators uncovered something deeply disturbing. Police statements had been altered. Not one, not a few, dozens upon dozens. In total, 164 police accounts were modified, and in 116 of those statements, comments critical of police actions had been removed. Entire sections disappeared. Details questioning leadership decisions vanished. Observations that contradicted the official narrative were stripped away. Imagine witnessing a tragedy, giving your statement honestly, then discovering, years later, that parts of your testimony had been edited out because they were inconvenient. The deeper investigators dug, the more troubling the picture became. But the most infamous chapter was still to come. Just days after the disaster, one of Britain's largest newspapers published a front page that would become legendary for all the wrong reasons. The headline read, "The Truth." It claimed Liverpool supporters had robbed victims. It claimed fans had urinated on police officers. It claimed supporters had assaulted emergency personnel trying to save lives. The allegations spread everywhere. Millions of people saw them. Millions believed them. There was only one problem. The claims were false. The accusations could not be substantiated. Many were completely fabricated. Yet by then, the damage had already been done. Imagine losing a loved one in a disaster. Now imagine being told that your son, your daughter, your husband, your brother was somehow responsible. Imagine grieving while the entire country points a finger at the victims. For families in Liverpool, that became reality. The anger never disappeared. The hurt never disappeared. And neither did the memory. Even decades later, many people across Liverpool continue to boycott that newspaper. Not because they forgot, because they remember. And while much of the country moved on, the families didn't. They refused to stop fighting. They challenged official reports. They demanded new investigations. They spent years searching for answers. Years turned into decades. Governments changed. Police. Officials retired. New generations grew up. Still, the families kept going. 27 years. Let that sink in. A child born the day after Hillsborough would have become a fully grown adult before the truth was officially recognized. Then finally, in 2016, everything changed. After one of the longest campaigns for justice in modern British history, a new inquest delivered its verdict. The 97 supporters were unlawfully killed. The disaster was not caused by Liverpool fans. The findings pointed to major failures in police planning, crowd management and emergency response. For the families, it was a moment they had waited nearly 3 decades to hear. The victims were finally cleared. The accusations collapsed. The official narrative that had shaped public opinion for years was shattered. The truth had finally emerged, but there was one question many people still couldn't answer. What happened to the people responsible? After all the altered statements, after all the misinformation, after all the years spent blaming innocent victims, who was held accountable? The answer remains one of the most controversial parts of the Hillsborough story, because for many families, truth and justice were never the same thing. Some legal actions followed, some prosecutions were attempted, but decades after the disaster, many of the figures at the center of the controversy never served prison sentences connected to the deaths. For many observers, accountability never truly arrived, and that's why Hillsborough still matters today. Not because it involved Liverpool, not because it happened in England, not because it was a soccer disaster. It matters because it forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. What happens when powerful institutions get the story wrong and then spend decades protecting that version of events? How long would it take for the truth to win? Would it take years, decades? Would it ever happen at all? Before you answer, look at the number again. 97. People who left home to watch a soccer game. 97. People who never came back. 97. Families forced to fight for nearly 3 decades just to clear their names. If you've made it this far, comment 97 below. Not for the algorithm, for remembrance, and tell me this. Can justice delayed for 27 years ever truly be called justice? Subscribe for more untold stories from the world of soccer. Stories that changed clubs, changed countries, and sometimes changed history itself. 97 lives, 97 names, never forgotten.